All right, welcome to a special post-debate edition of the Latest.com show. I'm Igor Garish. Joining us is Latest.com senior political analyst and a military vet from Pittsburgh, Josh Patton. And he's a 24-year veteran of the U.S. State Department and the author of We Meant Well from New York, Peter Van Buren. Well, last night was the final GOP debate before the Iowa Caucus. And, of course, the most notable thing was the absence of Donald Trump. You guys, by the way, on Wednesday both said that he would show up. You were wrong. But, you know.
Yes.
The ratings were down, and
he was there in presence.
Exactly. All the ratings were down, and all the talk was about Donald Trump. So, Josh, did Trump end up winning the night anyway?
I don't think so, because, again, the people who like Trump are probably going to like Trump no matter what he does. I mean, there was a poll done to see if his claim about if he shot people, would he lose support? 70% of respondents either would still support him or didn't know if they would still support him if he shot someone in cold blood. Right. Yes. The Dick Cheney doctrine. But yeah, so I mean, I really think though that for anyone who was legitimately undecided, Trump's absence at the debate was completely, noticeable for how substantive things were. Like, they talked about immigration, and there was no talk about, an unconstitutional ban based on religion or an impossible wall that could never be built. It was actually about things that the Republican president might be doing. And so it was, I think, very illuminating to people.
That's a very good point. The media is always talking about Trump. He's not trying to win over the media. He's trying to win over Iowa voters. Peter, do you think that he missed an opportunity by not showing up for yesterday?
Tough. I mean, as you politely pointed out at the opening of the show, Josh and I have been completely wrong on Trump pretty consistently. And so I'm tempted to do the Seinfeld thing where what I actually want to say, I'm going to say the exact opposite, but I'm now confused. I'm not sure what I was going to say, so I'll say this. Trump was there. He just wasn't physically on that stage. But each of the candidates took more than one opportunity to reference him, to mock him, to compare themselves to him.
Megyn Kelly's first question of the night was about him.
Yeah, the first question was, everyone please make fun of Donald Trump in a few words. And I'm sure more than a few viewers were doing what I know we were doing, which was flipping back and forth between the Trump show and the debate. So the fact that Trump wasn't there got him a lot of attention, and for better or worse, and it pains me to say for better, it drew a very sharp contrast between him and those other candidates. He was not there in a very big way, and people who are supporting him saw that, and people who thought they were strongly behind Ted Cruz probably came away disappointed last night, possibly some of the others as well. One of the things Trump does is he brings an awful lot of energy to these things. And the candidates that are, with the exception of Ben Carson, I mean, just is going to be low energy no matter what. But I mean, guys like Rubio or Bush never really kind of amped it up the way they do around Trump. And I wonder if some of their supporters kind of said, guy really doesn't seem to want this very badly.
Yeah, even with Trump gone, Ben Carson, a debate that lasted over 2 hours, got like 5 minutes of speaking time. But with Trump gone, Ted Cruz became the top candidate on the stage, and by virtue became the main target of the other candidates who were polling behind him. Was that kind of a smart move by Trump, Josh, to open up Ted Cruz for a little extra bashing?
Yeah, that aspect of his plan worked perfectly. I mean, the first questions, after Cruz made his Trump joke, which, to be fair, was a pretty funny joke. I mean, insulting everybody and saying now that the Donald Trump portion's out of the way. But the very next time he spoke, it was to complain about, your question was, Rand attacked Ted, you attacked Ted, and he looked just like a little simp. And there was nothing gained by Cruz, and I think a lot might have been lost. I mean, any sort of ground he may have gained in the immigration debate with Rubio was completely receded when they did when they used his own words against him, which I'm sure we'll get to later. So yeah, I think that Cruz is definitely damaged, and I think a lot more people are looking at Rubio as who, by the way, you were shitting on me last cast about Rubio, he did really well and was sort of like, he's sort of what people are talking about, at least in the media angle of it. I don't know what Iowa voters are talking about. Maybe they still don't care. But I think Rubio had a great night.
Yeah, I mean, we're allowed to use the word because Cruz is a dude. I mean, he came off as a little bitch last night. He was whining about how much time he was getting and how the other guys were making fun of him and everything. I mean, he didn't come off, the overused word, he didn't come off presidential at all. He didn't even come off kind of strong and snarky the way he does when he's facing off with Trump. He did not present himself as a front leader, and this was his big chance to do so. I also agree with Josh that if we have to go with winner, Rubio certainly was the one who did himself the most good last night. The video stuff aside, he came off as intelligent, articulate, and sort of rose above some of the silliness that was otherwise predominant last night.
Oh, Josh, you think Rubio unequivocally won that little immigration standoff with him and Ted Cruz last night? And Jeb?
I think so. Now, I mean, to be fair on the immigration thing, I think the whole point of that was that neither of them were going to come out a winner. But again, Rubio, in tempering his rhetoric thus far, has allowed himself sort of more wiggle room, whereas Cruz is just like this cowboy boot wearing hero that's going to kick immigrants over the border with his own 2 feet if he has to. So, and the other thing too, a quick sidebar that I absolutely love is that the immigration debate was between the 2 Hispanic candidates in the GOP field, and both were talking about how they would be way harder on,
he and Jeb went out.
Immigrants. Yeah, but Jeb with his act of love comment, I mean, he'll never kind of attack anyone from the right on immigration again. What I would compare it to is imagine if, President Obama had come out and said, we're not going to be taking it easy on these black thugs in the inner cities, talking like that. I really doubt that his black vote support would have been what it was. So what's interesting is if this rhetoric continues and one of them ends up being the nominee, Rubio or Cruz, even though they're Hispanic, I don't know if they're going to get that home field advantage with that voting bloc because of how shitty they've been on immigration.
Well, it's kind of ironic that we've been sold Rubio as this moderate candidate, and yesterday, he went far right on immigration, far right on the war in the Middle East. Started pandering about Jesus Christ being the only Lord and Savior. Peter, is this guy really the moderate?
That's true, he did.
The moderate hope that the establishment thinks they're looking for?
Yeah, quick circle back on immigration, and that is, I think some of it was negated, for better or worse, by the details. I don't think anybody in Iowa knows or cares who the Gang of 8 was that was being referenced back and forth. The argument about citizenship versus legalization easily could have confused and lost a lot of people. I think certainly in Iowa, people want their immigration served up to them, in black and white terms. A big advantage for Trump and difficult for some of these guys who really are into this issue in from various ways. But Rubio and Cruz and Jeb are clearly into it. I mean, they can't talk that sort of nerd immigration talk and expect it to influence people. Certainly not in Iowa.
That's why Christie always comes in with his, blah, 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 Washington, blah, blah, blah. Of course it's a complex, nuanced issue. Why would you want to talk about it that way? Yeah. Yet he does always score applause points with that, even though he sounds basically like a jock that's tired of how hard the class is.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in Iowa, you got to talk egg yield and stuff about alfalfa. I mean, that's what people want to get down into the details. No, seriously. I mean, if you're addressing the Cuban-American coalition in Miami, they're going to know that immigration stuff. And you have to think who you're talking to there. The Gang of 8 stuff resonates with nobody. But back to Rubio. I get the impression that Rubio really is just trying to see what sticks. He tried to position himself as a moderate for a while, and that didn't get much traction. He sees Trump maybe as weak on evangelical, so now, he's talking all about his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and whatever. I really get that air of desperation starting to swirl around him, where his first persona didn't work, so now he's going to come up with another persona. Jeb is sort of still looking for a persona in that sense. Cruz, I think to a certain extent, something of that. I mean, Christie, if you want to give him some credit at all, it's that he has sort of picked out a persona for himself and stuck with it, for better or worse. That kind of thing always bites politicians in the ass, because when they switch personas or they pick one that they think works well in Iowa, they're going to get called on it when they show up in New Hampshire, where Jesus is the Lord and Savior is probably less an important point among voters.
Well, Josh, I think we've been lied to. We were told that Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio are the guys that are different from these guys because they're in the middle, they're more establishment, they can win a general election. Well, Jeb Bush can't win anything. We already can see that much. But I don't know if Marco Rubio is really the guy that is going to – what's so moderate about him compared to the other candidates on stage?
Well, you're absolutely right that the Jeb Bush is the moderate establishment pick is a lie, because as a governor, he was even more conservative than his brother. So that was always horseshit. But again, everyone thought that this was going to be a compassionate election. They were going to make a big, broad appeal to Hispanics. So that's why he came out with that, compassionate talk on immigration. Same thing with criminal justice reform. That's bipartisan approval. Everyone likes the idea of spending less money for people who smoke pot or whatever. But then all of a sudden it became what it is. And so he's now unable, probably one of the most conservative people on the stage in as much as his record, and not able to ever sell that message. Rubio, on the other hand, as Peter pointed out, he's been trying on personas like hats. And so arguably, he could find one and then stick to it and govern that way. But if you do look at his record, he is a kind of moderate, a moderate Republican.
He's running away from that
freedom
record right now.
And what Republican hasn't in trying to win a primaries post Ronald Reagan?
Fair enough.
The thing that's so interesting is how this campaign is nothing like what it was supposed to be. A year ago, the playbook was very straightforward. Bush was going to be the presumptive nominee. The rest of these guys were going to bounce around and try to score a few points, raise their public stance a little bit. Huckabee would try to get a few lines in that would pull Bush in a particular direction or what have you. No one expected this to be a cat fight, and certainly the only reason for that is Donald Trump. We can talk later if you want about the Democrats, because nobody expected that to have any drama built into it at all. So the Republicans, for people like Bush, who I don't think has a lot of kind of creative, strategic thinking abilities, and was probably told, early on, the Bush clan got together and said, Jeb, here's your strategy. They didn't seem to
and $100 million.
Yeah, and here's your allowance. And nobody really seemed to adapt as Trump went along. Like many of us, including, I guess, occasionally us here on these podcasts, we just kept saying, well, by next week, Trump will be gone, or before we get to Iowa, Trump will be gone. And then you get to a point where Trump isn't gone, and all of a sudden Bush is saying, hey, I don't think this worked. What do I do now?
I think one of the keys to the debate and why we came away with Ted Cruz looking like he was beat up a bit and Marco Rubio looking like he was good was because how they answered the little video montages that Fox News brought up of their past statements. Josh, why aren't this damning video evidence just a regular part of all these debates?
I don't know, and it was amazing because they were like, you're about to see something you've never seen before, and I expected them to put out like a live T-Rex baby or maybe video evidence of aliens, but no, it was actually just video evidence, and it's funny because there was a show on HBO called The Newsroom where a key plot point was that they were trying to do the debates. And even they, in their radicalness, were never like, we're going to show video of these assholes being assholes. It's one of those things that was groundbreaking, and at the same time, you're like, how have we never done this before? I hope to see it again, and it was great because neither one of those guys, Rubio or Cruz, who were the only two to get the video packages, they did not come out of it looking good. Again, Rubio Rubio definitely handled it better, because Cruz was trying to sell it as it was part him trying to make a law better, part him trying to then add this poison pill to kill it, which, by the way, in the interview post-debate, Megyn Kelly completely let him off the hook for it, which was astounding. But, yeah, it did exactly what you thought it would. They stammered, and, you know, the question was answered when it was asked, rather than anything they said wasn't going to help it. I hope they do this all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those, as Josh said, I mean, it was brilliant that no one thought of doing this before. In the age of computers and the technology and everything, so many times in these debates on both sides we get these, well, that's not what I said. Chris Cuomo, in his interrogation of Bernie Sanders at the last Democratic thing, basically Bernie began every one of his answers by saying, Chris, that isn't accurate. Chris, that isn't what I said. And if these folks could just put this video up there and say, well, here it is. You know, take a look at it. Here's exactly what I said. First, we could save so much time. And second, it really would put these guys on the spot. I thought that was just brilliant. And for us to be sitting here saying that Fox News, you know, unveiled a brilliant way of reaching objectivity on how honest and you know, non-hypocritical these guys are. I mean, for us to say that about Fox tells you as much about how messed up this election is as anything. I think I would love to see sort of online fact checking now going, or you know, underneath the screen along with these video clips. The same thing you see usually the next day in the news. Well, you know, Bernie Sanders said this, but actually the statistics are so and so. I mean, I'd love to see that running underneath these people and let them and moderators comment on it. That was just brilliant stuff. It made for great television. It made for great debate, and it really, in a way, said what this stuff is supposed to do. It's not supposed to be a commercial where everybody gets 10 minutes to talk about how wonderful they are. It's supposed to expose these people to the voters. And I got to say it, Fox really nailed it.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen Donald Trump get nailed in one of those, though.
Yeah, that would have been cool. You know, they had one ready.
Yeah.
One other thing, too, that I want to point out is because, you know, we're talking about like how it was great to have a debate like we used to again. And I do think we need to put that in perspective again, because remember, pre-Trump, debates were fucking stupid. Like, it was just just an avalanche of bullshit all the time. You know, and so really, but the debates were more telling for different reasons, not so much what they were saying. But then once it got to Trump, it was basically 2 hours of the 5 minutes before a WWE match. And so the thing that I thought was great about the video package, too, that it does sort of, as Peter was saying, bring a debate closer in line to what we think we want a debate to be, which is not just them arguing issues, but holding them accountable to the stuff that they're saying on the campaign trail, you know? Again, to go back to that, show, the newsroom, one of the questions that they wanted to do was ask Michelle Bachmann, you know, since God told you to run, what does God's voice sound like, and is this the first time you've heard voices? And again, you could never ask that question. Like, even if you get the most respected journalist in the world to do that, it's a dick question. I mean, obviously that's bullshit. But if you put a video package of her saying that she speaks to God, it doesn't have that kind of rudeness to it. So again, because they all copy each other, hopefully this is a thing that's going to start happening. And by the time we get to the general, I mean, the last debate will hopefully be just old statements. They play it and say, so that's bullshit. What, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even have to ask a question. That's why I love it. It got me super psyched.
Yeah,
it's going to be very interesting. You can imagine the phone calls assuming the candidates did not know a lot about this or even know that it was going to happen. I don't know. But, I mean, we hear talk that the Sanders and Clinton campaigns are in negotiations about some debates before Super Tuesday. You were
right about that, Peter.
Okay, we got one right. I mean, considering how many we've gotten wrong. But, you can just imagine the phone calls that were blasting around the world last night as they're trying to figure out, negotiate the parameters of this. If you're going to show clips, how many clips are you going to show? Are we going to get to see them in advance? Are we going to know the topic in advance? I mean, there's going to be an enormous pressure on the networks, whoever handles these debates going forward or into the general election, to use this new tool. But the candidates are going to put enormous pressure to make sure it works what they perceive to be their own advantage. I mean, with Clinton, my goodness, you've got stuff going back into the 80s of her saying things that would just be a gold mine to work with. I mean, Sanders, I don't know that much about his old record, but he seems to have been fairly consistent in his sort of odd socialist, progressive, old man, cranky views.
You'd probably get it on the other end, Peter, of him saying like way more wild socialist shit, like there shouldn't be rich people should be illegal or something stupid.
Yeah. He's probably got some stuff where he had like long hair and he was talking about shoot the rich or something. But I mean, you've got that with Hillary too, going all the way back to her Goldwater days, for goodness sakes. So this has enormous potential if the networks have the balls, like Fox did, to really use this tool. I was stunned last night to see that. Pleased, but stunned.
Yeah.
Well, along with the videos, Fox News also used questions from YouTube, which other networks have also done, but this one actually allowed for questions about police brutality, hate crimes against Muslims to actually be brought up for the first time in a Republican debate. Peter, what did you think about the YouTube questions last night and the people that asked them?
I am very glad that those questions were raised, and I'm very glad that some alternate voices were used. I think it's terrific that we heard from somebody other than, network moderators to do this. On the other hand, I was deeply dismayed at how much of a commercial it was for YouTube. They picked people who are their million follower type folks. We had an article, I had an article today on Latest.com about Dulcie Candy, which apparently is mostly her real name. She was the Mexican immigrant woman. And, her claim to fame is that she has 2 million followers of her makeup videos on YouTube. I think that if they wanted to have someone ask serious questions about immigration, even from a very personal point of view, there are people out there who can represent these issues more broadly and less sort of commercially, artificially. Even the idea of bringing in these disparate voices, you just got the impression that there was a checklist. We had 3 different people, and those 3 people covered black guy, Hispanic person, Muslim person, young people, veteran. It's like all the little boxes got ticked off there, so that at the end of the night, everybody could say, well, okay, we've got all that done. I mean, it was like, well, we can't show like a Jew because, oh my God, if it turned out that one of these people were Jewish, that wouldn't be what we're trying to do here. So it came off to me more like the old Benetton ads. I don't know if you remember those, where they had kids of all races wearing
solid reference.
Sweaters. Yeah, and I like the idea, but again, it came off as so sort of 2016 America, where we can't have a realistic conversation about Islamophobia or police violence. We have to have a constructed one with the boundaries set out by people who don't want to really offend anyone, even when they bring up tough subjects.
Well, we haven't really had those conversations, at least in Republican debates. But at the same time, Josh, they canceled the NBC debate because of the CNBC moderators upset them. But can you imagine if NBC had brought out these police brutality and Muslim hate crime questions, how much they would be up in arms?
Yeah, it was definitely, Fox was one of the only ones who could pull this off. And I mean, I've got to give them credit. Now, what's funny, if you remember the first debate, it was with Facebook. And so they had questions from Facebook, and those questions were fucking stupid. Like, it was like Barbara Elkins from Worcester, Mass. wants to know, how much who loves God the most? They were ridiculous. So I'm gonna respectfully disagree with grandfather Peter down there, because it is 2016 America, and
Mr. Grandfather Peter, you son.
But by showing these sort of polished, acclaimed, as it were, with 2 million subscribers, I mean, it's nothing to shake a stick at. I think that was sort of the only way they could pull it off. You know, it justified the question, them being there because of the YouTube angle and that they were popular. And then the boxes that were ticked off is what sort of justified the question being asked without a million spin artists immediately going, oh, biased, it's a gotcha question, which that's what they are all supposed to be. You know,
Yeah. I guess they were pretty softball versions of so-called tough questions. I mean, basically, you know,
to be fair,
is it okay? I mean, should we welcome? Yeah, I mean, should we welcome immigrants to America? Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess we should. Things like that. The other thing that I objected to was, you know, the whole commercialization. You know, it's like democracy brought to you tonight by YouTube. You know, it just had that whole sponsorship thing. I mean, it would be like, you know, somebody from GM on there, you know, asking about the preferred car of conservatives today. It just came off as a little greasy. I'm willing to accept it if we believe it is a small step towards something bigger and better. But I fear it's not. It's just kind of a placeholder.
Well, all right. It was a solid debate, though, but let's talk about what's going to come of it. Iowa's going to vote in, I don't know, 72, 74 hours. So did anyone do anything last night, Josh, that will get Iowa voters excited now that weren't before to brave the cold, go out on Monday, and caucus for this guy for 2 hours? Or lady.
I think Rubio might have pulled that off. And what I mean by that is that his performance combined with Cruz completely tripping over his dick the entire night, I think is going to put Rubio in a much better position than we even expected on Wednesday. So I think that Rubio will do well. And I don't know if Rand Paul was just good at packing the room, or maybe there's really something to what he's saying about having a lot of people on the ground in Iowa. But I'm sure this will be wrong, but I'm going to say it's Trump, Rubio, and Paul as 1, 2, 3 in Iowa.
Interesting. Well, the Paul supporters were definitely the most vocal in the room last night. So would you say that Rubio unequivocally won the debate last night, Josh? As you take a
yes,
big
100%.
That soda. Peter?
I did. I thought you were going to Peter, and I thought it was going to be good.
Peter, who do you think? Did anyone do anything that will really energize their supporters?
You know, Rubio did a great job, and I can't say he didn't do that. I think Christie was good in the sense that he was consistent. Anybody that was leaning Christie didn't find any reason not to. The big challenge on voting day is really going to be who's number 3. Josh, I'm assuming you purposely left Cruz out of your top 3.
I did.
Okay, because I'm tempted to say it's Trump-Cruz or Cruz-Trump, but really what matters is going to be who's number 3, because number 3 is going to have that push above the other losers into New Hampshire and so forth. This is going to be when Ben Carson dies off, when Jeb Bush, maybe he's going to stick it out a little longer, but if Rand Paul doesn't come up...
Carson's over this shit.
Yeah, I mean, this thing. So number 3 is going to be there. I would be very surprised if Cruz was not in 1, 2, 3. I'm
trying to be bold, man. I'm making the bold one, the bold prediction.
No. You're very bold. We all agree. Very bold. But it's just hard to see that all of Cruz's support is just going to kind of drop off based on his dumb fuckery last night. The momentum.
Now, to be fair to my position, Peter, his poll numbers have been declining for he hasn't been in front of Trump for 2 weeks. So it's possible that people were like, I'm into this Cruz guy, and then they listened to him for 5 minutes and were just like, ugh.
No, that's what makes this interesting.
People.
Yeah, that's what makes this interesting. I mean, the idea that Trump is going to pull off either 1 or a very strong 2 is I think everybody thinks that, and I'd be very shocking if it wasn't that way.
Oh, God, I'll come on the next podcast with a flag around my shoulders if Donald Trump doesn't place in Iowa. I will sing the national anthem. God bless America.
I will, what will I do? I will pull a Ben Carson and recite the preamble to the Constitution exactly the way I learned it on Schoolhouse Rock, just like Ben did.
He really did.
Yeah, it was pretty sad.
And still fucked up a word, though. Still messed up a word. I don't remember which one, but.
Right.
And he closed his eyes.
Yeah, that was he always does that. He's so weird. I hope he didn't do any brain surgeries.
So, Trump, Rubio maybe, Cruz maybe. I don't know, Igor. We've heard your prediction.
Yeah,
I would go Trump. I think it would be Cruz, Rubio, but I think Rubio might sneak in there. I don't think anyone else can really sneak in. Like right now, there's nobody polling in the double digits outside of those three. It's pretty much they're very far back, including Carson, who was floating around for a while. Josh, well, does that mean you think that Ted Cruz lost the most during the debate, or was there anyone else that this debate really hurt?
Again, really hurt? No. Here's the thing. I can't believe that so many people are saying Christie did well, because I thought he looked like a complete idiot, because everything he did was like, he was basically Rudy Giuliani, but instead of, because Giuliani was talking about Hillary Clinton and being from New York, because that was when he was running, she was still the presumptive nominee. So it's just like 9/11, Hillary Clinton sucks, and, Christie added the Washington bullshit angle. So I thought he showed himself to be really tired, but I guess if Christie does appeal to you, those are the things about him that does. Kasich, I also think he kind of was barely on the stage.
Yeah.
Was he there? Honestly, I sort of forgot he was there when I was talking about people who were going to disappear if they didn't get third place.
He had already done it.
I honestly forgot Kasich was even there.
Well, Kasich is from Pittsburgh, so I notice him because he talks with a perfect goddamn Pittsburgh accent. So.
I think the thing with Christie, the worst answer he gave was when Megyn Kelly asked him what he would cut from the budget to help improve the economy. He said Planned Parenthood, and she said, "Is there anything bigger?" And he said, "There's nothing bigger than the murder of all these babies." Like,
that was
fine, but that's still like a fraction of 1% of the budget. Peter, do you think that?
And it does remind me that, and he threw in that stupid thing at the end. Now that you mentioned it, where he talked about how his wife didn't call him for 6 hours, and he assumed she must have been taken away as a virgin by Al Qaeda or something. It's like 14 years ago, I didn't hear from my wife for a while in the midst of a giant national disaster, and so I'll be a better president. It got a little sad. I hadn't thought about that earlier when I said something vaguely positive about him. I hereby withdraw that positivity. Because you're right, it was goddamn stupid.
Is there anyone that you think this debate especially hurt going into the caucus?
Carson, maybe?
Carson, yeah. I think the guys who had a nail point, a stake posed over their chest, like Kasich and Carson, I think they pushed that in another little bit. Really, again, as we talked about, Cruz is the only sort of, this may have really stung a little bit. We'll see. Give us a couple of days till Monday.
Again, I'm completely not pretending to be unbiased and sort of like educated weighing of the evidence. I'm just hoping that Cruz goes away and Trump and the rest can fight it out.
Fair enough.
It is Iowa. It's all about turnout, and the polls aren't always accurate. Is there one candidate that maybe will outperform the polls and sneak into that top three instead of a Cruz or a Rubio, do you think, Josh?
I think Rand Paul might do it. Again, if he's telling the truth about what his support's like in Iowa, and it wasn't just a good room for him last night, he might do way better than people think.
Paul's always got the potential. He's one of the people who has a set of well-formed ideas, a vision, if you will, that is not insane, like what Donald Trump passes off as a vision. Paul could, in fact, tap into some of that out there, but again, some of his things, which I think are terrific talking about the NSA, he is really a lone voice in the Republican side. making those statements, and I just don't know in a place like Iowa that those kind of sort of out of the box ideas are going to resonate.
Even his abortion answer, like in terms of like Rand Paul and Ron Paul is way more anti-abortion than his father ever was, and is absolutely cool with the idea of legislating that. But he still, he couldn't even say that in the debate, because he said that and then added the caveat. He's like, but of course it would, states' rights. I would never challenge states' rights, because his religion really is the Constitution, or his libertarian understanding of it. More so than even his religion. So he couldn't, I guess maybe that's why I like him, because it's impossible for him to pander even when he tries. So that's why I'm pulling for him like a scrappy little guy. Also,
yeah, I mean, he also got into that weird little side thing where he had to defend that his dad liked him, and I felt kind of bad for him. There was a brief little moment about who was, Ron Paul liked the most up there on the stage or something weird like that.
And it was actually Cruz, which was weird.
Yeah.
Like, Cruz, do you think you would be more Ron Paul than Rand Paul? And he's like, you know what, I think I would, all due respect.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's the only sort of potential dark horse candidate there. But, again, it's just hard to see him pulling 1, 2, 3. See.
Yep.
Well, there's still 12 candidates left in the race, so Monday we're going to go vote. Tuesday, Josh, who do you think drops out of the race?
I think Kasich will.
You don't think
I think
Kasich
Carson
is waiting for New Hampshire?
Maybe. I really feel like he strikes me as very old school that way. If he doesn't come in third, and unless he knows something we don't about Iowa, I imagine he would just take it back to Ohio and be governor.
My favorite
I think
answer
Carson
last night was Jim Gilmore, who said that I chose not to start my campaign in Iowa. I'm going to start my campaign in New Hampshire. That's where it's going to end, too.
Yeah, he was. Oh, I kind of wish he'd been around, though, the whole time for those undercards, because he's feisty. I like him.
Yeah, he was a hoot. There's only 8 days between Iowa and New Hampshire, so
there's another debate, by the way, next weekend before the primary.
Mm-hmm.
A Republican debate?
Yep.
Again?
On February 6th.
Oh, please, people, come on. I mean, we've all seen it. But anyway, the idea, okay, fine. That makes it even more clear that it'd be very unlikely somebody's going to take a full dive out.
Yeah, I didn't even know about the debate. No one's going to drop out before.
I mean, you got 5 days to the next debate, and then another 2 to the New Hampshire thing. I mean, they've already rented the rooms and leased the bus and everything. Seriously, I mean, why not?
Yeah, fair point. And that is sort of what, because here's the thing, money would stop after Iowa. Like in 2008, even a little bit in 2012, you fuck up in Iowa, even though New Hampshire's maybe 8-10 days away, your money just stops immediately. And with super PACs now, that's not as big of a concern. So again, Jeb Bush not going anywhere, probably until Super Tuesday, because he's still sitting on $40 million.
All right. Well, we're going to see what happens in Iowa on Monday and reconvene here and see how wrong you guys were this time. All right. Thanks for tuning into the Latest.com show. Keep reading Latest.com.